And welcome back to the show. Well, there is a film coming out that I just have to tell you about. It is called Deadland. It is coming to streaming platforms near you very, very soon. And this is one of those movies that could have crept underneath the cracks because it is an absolutely brilliant film. But we're lucky enough to actually be able to get the director of the film, Lance Larson, on the phone right now to chat a little bit about this amazing film. Welcome to the program, Lance.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, Lance, as you've probably worked out, I really, really liked Deadland. So tell us a little bit about this film. Where did this film come from for you, and what's the journey been like to get it to where it is today?
Oh boy, that's a big question. For me, the film started just every film or script I starts with character. So I came across an article about a first generation U.S. border agent whose parents were undocumented, crossed the border, and had him, and then he grew up to be a border agent, which I just thought was amazing duality. Like, how does somebody become a border agent when their parents were undocumented? So, article was really interesting. The guy, his Mexican heritage wasn't lost on him, but he loved his country, loved America. So he said the best part of the job was saving lives. So that's kind of what helped him sleep at night. So I found that just like an interesting start to base a story on. Was just a great character in a unique position.
So there's so many different elements to this film as well. It's almost difficult to know how to ask, but how did the story grow from there, especially with the supernatural element to it as well?
Yeah, like almost every story I do, I kind of back into, like, I find a nugget or something that I think is interesting, and then I just start to kind of do research. And in this case, I wrote the script with Jazz Shelton, who also DP'd the film. Great, wonderful DP. But we're great friends. We've been shooting together since college. So when we came across this character, we thought, well, let's just do our homework and really investigate the border and find out what all there is to know. And as we did that, just what we like to do is I dissect just the word, like border, and that was interesting to us because border is a total human construct, right? Before humans, there were no borders.
Yep.
And when humans cease to exist, there will be no borders again. So I find that interesting, and so did Jazz. And so then we started talking about, like, at the time, my dad was dying of liver cancer. And so, I thought I was going to lose him, and luckily he survived it. But during the making of this film, my mom passed. So we had this, and she was my best friend, so it was just an awful loss. But for us, it was also not just about, like, borders on the physical level, but also the metaphysical level. So we started to really dissect, because for us, like, when you look at a border, love and time laugh at borders, right? They cease to exist.
Yep.
So kind of felt like that was something we could really kind of dive into because, when you think about, like, when I develop films, I like them to be grounded in something very real. So in this case, it's the border, right? But at the same time, I also wanted to tell a film on, like, a metaphysical level, which is, so people really like ghost stories. So if you ground it in something real, all of a sudden you have a really, really good movie, in my opinion. If it's just one or the other, then, you're dealing with more of a one-dimensional film, but this had multiple dimensions, literally.
Yeah. Do you think people around the world see borders differently now after COVID? I mean, here in Australia, of course, our major border for our country is all ocean. But within the States, when we were growing up, you didn't even know when you'd crossed a border into another state if there wasn't a sign there. Like, my earliest memory of crossing a border was my dad turning around from the front seat going, oh, we're in New South Wales now. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing there. And then all of a sudden during COVID, all of our borders were manned by police. You needed a permit to cross over a border and things like that. Do you think people are more aware now of what that Mexican-US border is like now because of COVID?
Well, in America, no, but I do think borders are universal to every country. I find what you're saying very interesting, but before I get to Australia, I'll say that all around the world, people have border issues.
Yep.
So we felt like it's a pretty universal concept. In the U.S., it's really heightened, especially around election years. They really like to, both sides really like to, stake their view on it. But we found, I find through just the people, when we started interviewing, like when we started researching the border, we started interviewing people that lived on both sides that live right around the border. And those stories became very interesting because they're very different perspectives, very unique perspectives, and both compelling. So what you just said is really interesting to me about Australia, because that I didn't know, and I find that really interesting. So this is a very new thing for Australians to, especially with COVID, to have be all of a sudden, when you weren't conscious of it, now you are.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting and good timing, I guess, for this film.
Definitely. So tell us a little bit about growing the character as well, because you've created an absolutely fascinating character there with Angel. So tell us a little bit about how you grew that character, especially from that news article that you read in the first place.
Yeah, I think what I like to do with lead characters, and I think that you basically find something interesting about them, and then metaphorically chase them into the woods and just throw rocks at them for 2.5 acts, right?
Yep.
And so that's kind of what we do. We just try to make his life as impossible to deal with throughout the first 2.5 acts. So he's just, he's got his father comes back into town, and at the same time, this immigrant crosses, and he's dealing with both of these things and trying to keep both of them kind of under wraps. And it's like he's like in an impossible situation. And so we just let those circumstances mount. And it's really a fun ride. And I think the more we could just throw at the Angel character, the better. And Roberto Urbina did an amazing job, basically trying to keep the weight of the world on his shoulders, but keep his cool at the same time. So, it was a lot of fun.
So tell us a little bit about the casting there. As you said, Roberto does a brilliant job in this film. Was he someone that you knew before you started to make the film, or was he someone that came on board during the casting process?
Yeah, he came on board during the casting process, and I really got to give a shout out to Beth Limpari, our casting director, and to Elizabeth Avion. They were extremely helpful through the process and finding just brilliant actors. And we had pretty much cast the other roles, and we were still searching for a good Angel or Angel, however you want to pronounce his name. Beth originally found the agents, and then because we cast Juliet, and then Elizabeth said, "Why don't you ask their agents and see if there's somebody else there?" And Elizabeth had already done that and found Roberto, and so they had sent me his reel, and I just offered him right there. Blown away. He was in the Breaking Bad version, the Colombian version of that, and he was also in Narcos, and just a brilliant actor.
Definitely. Now, going back to the script for a moment, the twists and turns, tell us a little bit about that script writing process, because I know there's a lot of young screenwriters that listen to this show, and the twists and turns in this film work so well. Tell us a little bit about that script writing process and those twists and turns. Were those ideas that you had from the very start, or did they kind of develop as the script evolved?
A little bit of both. I started my career as an editor, so I really understand pace. And so, the script, it's funny, when I always wanted to be a director, so I became an editor to learn how to tell a story in pictures. And what I didn't realize was that editing would teach me how to write, because I'm constantly breaking down storylines and rebuilding them and seeing what is necessary to tell a story. So when I shoot, I'm very efficient. And when I write, I'm pretty efficient as well, because I know just from doing it for so many years and cutting and realizing, oh, you don't need this to tell the story. What is actually important to go on the page and what is important to go on the screen? And sometimes those are two different things. But one of the fun things in writing is when you understand the craft pretty well, you can break the rules if you know the rules. And for instance, like when some people first read this script in the first 5 or 6 pages, one person who was looking at the script said to me, producer said, you have 2 inciting incidences. And, because there's always the inciting incident right at the beginning of the script that sets the story in motion, right?
Yep.
And so when they asked me that question, you have 2. And I was like, do I? And they're like, yeah. You got the guy coming across the river, and you got the old man that shows up at the house. I said, yep, you're right. Or is it 2 inciting incidences, or is it 1? Is it 1 in the same instance? And they thought about it, and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. So that's kind of breaking the rule, but it's not at the same time. So that's what's really fun about it. If you listen closely to what the old man says, he says the first thing he says is, "I come from the river."
Yep.
So you think about that line; it's an important.
Definitely.
So it's so fun. But what I would say to young screenwriters is, don't focus on the plot too much. The plot will come. Focus on your characters, because your characters will tell the story.
Yep.
If you have a good character, your character will tell it, because a lot of people come up with this fantastic plot, but they don't have great characters, and then it feels hollow.
Yep.
Where you can have a great character and not have much of a plot, and you'll follow that character to the ends of the earth because they're so interesting.
Yeah.
So if you can do both, great, but always start with character.
Lance, you said then that you'd always wanted to be a director, and you had 2 amazing short films that you had done before that. What was it like walking onto the set for the first day on this film as a director of a feature film, and what did you feel was the most different from shooting a short film when you were shooting this feature?
I would say, the shooting wise, it's not that different. It's just more days. But the big difference is especially with an independent film, because we were shooting during COVID, so I just felt like at any point the ground was going to fall out from under me, and I wouldn't be able to finish the film. Luckily, the shoot went really smooth, and we made all our days, and it was great. But man, those first couple of weeks, it just felt like, if one key actor or crew member got COVID, we'd be shut down, and would we be able to rebound from that and get it made? And, so I think when you're doing a feature, especially an indie one, it's just, you just want the wheels to keep turning. And that's where the real stress is. The actual movie making is no different.
Yeah.
But it's the stress of is the engine going to, keep running for the whole shoot? And that's the difference. It just kind of keeps you on edge. And I tell you what, it makes you really appreciate the process.
Definitely. Well, Lance, it did keep running, and you've ended up with an amazing film. So I know we're running out of time. So to quickly finish off, what would you like to say to people out there who are about to sit down and watch Deadland for the first time?
That's a good question. I would say if you're into psychological thrillers, this is the movie for you. I think it's Deadland's got a little bit of something in there for everyone. It's a movie that's got, like you said, a lot of twists and turns. So if you're into plot twists and characters, really, really good characters, and a really strong mystery, I think there's a lot there for an audience. So hopefully that's what they're looking for. Little scares in it. So it's definitely keep you on the edge of your chair. So.